thank you everybody for joining us. We have a special day. We're joined again by Mr. Neil Benson, who's a 12-13 time MVP, a whole bunch of times.
14.
14? I gotta go update. Have to go update the meeting now. So Neil's going to be talking about an interesting problem in data management, not specific to Dataverse, but I think there are a couple things that do focus on Dataverse specific approaches. Yeah, but in general, a common data management problem. And I'm not going to hold things up. Neil, I'll let you explain it more. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Aidan. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back with the DC user group. Thanks very much for having me back again. As Aidan said, my name is Neil Benson. I run two businesses here in Australia, one called Customery, which is my online training and coaching business. I teach people how to use agile approaches like Scrum for Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. And the other one is Superware, which is a more traditional systems integrator and ISV business. And we build business apps for the superannuation industry, which is Australia's funny name for retirement accounts, basically. So we have a government mandated retirement system, and you have to save up lots of money. Right, what we're going to be talking about today is what I affectionately call the Elon Musk problem. And if I share my slides with you, and I've had various names for this problem in the past. I used to call it the entrepreneur problem, but Elon Musk is a fairly well recognized figure. And if you see this title slide, you'll see why it's a challenge. Like there are 14 Elon Musks on this title slide and 14 different companies that Elon is involved with or has been involved with or founded or started or sold. Some of which you'll recognize, some of which I only found because I did a lot of research on Wikipedia to find some of these things out. Like Thud was some kind of magazine that he created, but it's no longer running. The challenge is really because in Dataverse, we have a problem in Dataverse in our data modeling capability. If you think about the accounts and contact relationship, we have a problem with Elon, but we'll see this in lots and lots of projects with lots of our customer organizations. Elon has many roles at many different companies. I've worked with organizations who do a lot of work with company directors who may have directorships or chairperson roles at lots of different boards. We've got philanthropists who may have roles at different nonprofits. We get public sector bureaucrats. Do you call them bureaucrats in the US? Civil servants, we call them in the UK. We get civil servants who've got roles at many different government agencies and departments. I've worked with customers who work with a lot of healthcare professionals, with nurses or doctors who've got different jobs at different hospitals. I see that as well with teachers who might have part-time jobs teaching at different universities or different schools. And of course, the entrepreneur problem, which I first encountered in business banking, trying to do Dynamics CRM in 2012. Small business owners quite often own lots of small businesses. I've got a dry cleaner and a window cleaner business and a car rental business. How do we track that in Dataverse? What's the problem? Well, Dataverse makes it really hard. The data model, as it was created, it was designed back in the late 90s. A contact can have a relationship to a parental account record. And accounts can have lots of contacts, but contacts can't have relationships with multiple accounts. It's all designed around this one-to-many relationship between accounts and contacts. So we're going to need to be creative. We're going to need to box our way out of this problem. And I've had lots of different attempts at trying to solve it. And I don't think any of them are perfect. None of them solve the problem for every organization who has this requirement. But I thought I'd present 5 or 6 different options, and we can go through them and debate them and discuss them. And I'd love to get your ideas and your feedback, because I'm pretty sure the 6 ideas I've got here are not all the ways of solving this problem. And I'd love to hear what you've done and what you think of my ideas. So we'll get into a little demonstration in a moment. But speaking of Power Platform Conference, if you look at the speaker lineup on the front page, there's a gentleman called Nirav Shah, who is the vice president for Dataverse at Microsoft. And when I discussed the Elon Musk problem with him recently, he apologized because he designed the Dataverse data model back in the late 90s. We didn't get into it too much, but I think there's some design decisions in there that were similar to the CRM applications at the time, Sales Logics and Goldmine and Act and Maximizer and Siebel. And, it was a pretty immature CRM marketplace back then. And when Microsoft designed Dynamics, Microsoft Business Solutions, Customer Relationship Management 1.0, they built the data model similar to those other products. And one of them was this shortcoming that we have, constant contacts. Has anybody else had this challenge? Am I on my own here? Hopefully, some of you nodding your heads and you've had this kind of similar challenge too.
You're getting lots of thumbs up here.
Yeah, okay, great stuff. When we think about solving the problem, there's a couple of considerations we need to have in the back of our mind when we're trying to design a way out of this challenge. One is the appearance of duplicates. There are 14 Elon Musks in my sample data, but users don't want to handle duplicates, right? If I need to attach something to Elon Musk, or I need to record a phone call with Elon Musk, or I need to update Elon's record, I don't want to have to do it 14 times. We don't want to have lots of duplicate records. Now, there's some inescapability when you're handling somebody like Elon with 14 different jobs at 14 different organizations. There's going to be some level of duplicity there, but we want to minimize that where possible. We want a holistic view of the person. We want to be able to see all of our interactions with them, regardless of their job history. And we see this even in very basic customer relationship management projects, where we're dealing with a contact who's left an organization. So Microsoft would encourage us to deactivate that contact record. And then if they pop up at another organization, we create a new contact record and we associate them with the new account. And we do that rather than just changing the account field on the contact record, because then all the previous contact history would appear underneath that account, and that's probably not appropriate. Like all the historical emails and meetings we've had with them were related to their old job. We don't want to associate those activities with the new account. So we deactivate the old one, create a new contact record, but now I've got two contact records of the same person. One is inactive and one is active, but I want to see the history of my interactions with that person. So that's the holistic view that we're trying to get to. We also have to be sensitive to the way that other applications work with the Dynamics 365 sales. For example, the marketing app or the Outlook app, they're built to handle the existing data model. And if we get too creative, we can break those other apps and the way that they're designed to work. And then a fourth consideration is any kind of integration, not just ERP, but any kind of integration you've got with Dataverse and other systems you might have in your organization. So if you're using some of the standard integrations, particularly with Dynamics 365 Finance or Dynamics 365 Business Central, those are kind of predicated on the standard Dataverse data model, and so you might have to adjust the way that your integration works. And sometimes those ERP applications or your other applications have a more sophisticated data model, and you've actually had to dumb it down to get the stuff to synchronize with Dataverse. So integration can be a tough one to crack. Right. So what are the options? Here are 6 that I can think of. I'm going to demonstrate 5 of them in just a moment. Love to hear if you've got any other ideas. First one is multiple contacts. We're just going to create a new contact record for every role that Elon Musk has. So there's going to be 14 contact records, all called Elon Musk. This is quite a simple solution. All we're doing is saying, look, a contact record doesn't represent a person. It represents a business card. And if Elon's got 14 different business cards, then there's going to be 14 different contact records. I quite like the elegance of when you explain it like that. You just go, okay, yeah, I get it. If I had 3 business cards in my wallet for the same person because they owned 3 businesses or taught at 3 different universities, then yeah, that it might be reasonable that I would have 3 contact records. So contact record represents a business card, not a person. I think that analogy will last only a little while longer because I don't know. It's been a long time since I printed any business cards. I'm sure the next generation of users won't even know what a business card is. We'll have to explain it to them. Same as when we explain why there's a floppy disk icon when they try to save a record. The second option I've got here is connections. Well, we can have one Elon Musk contact record representing a person and all his different account records representing the different organizations he's a part of and connect them using connections. Or we could connect Elon Musk contact records to all the other Elon Musk contact records. So 2 different ways connections could be used. I'm going to show you one of them. Connections are a very flexible feature in Dataverse. Not a very popular feature. I think the theory is good. The implementation of it, the user interface in particular, is a little challenging. And so they don't get maybe used as often as they could get used. And they haven't seen a lot of love from Microsoft. There hasn't been any investment in the connections feature for a long, long time. So it's not my go-to, but it is mentioned quite a lot when I talk about the Elon Musk problem. People say, "I just use connections." I don't think they're as helpful as we'd like them to be. The third one is to use an intersect entity. So in between the contact and the account, we're going to have a table for storing information about how those things are related. So I call it a role, or you can call it an employment position, or whatever you need to call it. And that would store the job title and their email for that person at that company. So that intersect table, there's 2 options. Number 3 and number 4 here both involve this similar kind of design. In number 3, what I've done is I've repurposed the leads table, which is part of Dynamics 365 Sales, and I've renamed it roles, and it's going to be our intersect entity. We'll talk about why that's an interesting idea when we come to do the demo. And in number 4, I've taken that same design idea of having an intersect table in between the contacts and accounts, and I've just created a custom table. We call it roles. It's going to store information about the job title and the email address and the business phone number of that person at that company. So there's 2 very similar designs. One repurposes an existing table from Dataverse, and then the other is custom. Number 5 is another custom table. This time we've created a new parental table for contacts called person. And so similar to number 1, what we're saying is contacts are going to be treated like a business card. But I want something to bring all those contacts together and associate them. What I'm going to do is have one parental record called a person. And so we can see Elon Musk is the person, and then he's got 14 different jobs, and the job information is stored in a contact record. The way I like to think about this is it's pretty similar to the LinkedIn model. So in LinkedIn, you've got your user account, and then you can have experiences. I think they're called experiences. And you can associate yourself with multiple companies. And so imagine underneath LinkedIn, you could have this similar kind of data model. If you were brave enough to run LinkedIn on Dataverse. I do it like this. And then lastly, I'm not going to do a demonstration, but it's an idea that came up in the Brisbane session when I discussed the Elon Musk problem here in my local user group. And one of the consultants from a local Microsoft partner suggested this idea of using self-referential contacts. And I've seen this implemented at KPMG Australia. Microsoft Consulting Services implemented Dynamics 365 for us, and they used this option. So they had 2 types of contact record, one representing a person and another type of contact record to represent that person's role at a company. It got a little confusing, I have to say, and it's again just based on the implementation that I saw at KPMG Australia. Lots of stuff broke. The Outlook app didn't work, and various other issues. So it got pretty challenging. So it's an option it might be the best option for a particular customer that you're working with, but it's not my go-to. So before we jump into the demo, does anybody get any other creative ways that they've solved this challenge, or any feedback on the 6 that are there?
I'm curious to hear more about number 3. Heard about some form of many of these, but the leads I'm really intrigued by.
Yeah. Okay. I quite like it, but it got the most vigorous pushback from the folks in Brisbane, and from our fellow MVPs. Aidan, when I posted it in one of our discussion forums, there's definitely a group of customizers who are dead set against repurposing standard features into something else. And that could be as simple as, don't rename that field and use it for something similar sounding, but create a new custom field. Don't repurpose stuff. Because there's a lot of legacy features in Dynamics 365 and in Dataverse that have very specific purposes, and you think you can get away with just repurposing it, but you might break something else. So yeah, it's maybe a slightly more controversial one.
Yeah, I've had that problem, and one way that, and the problem is that, say they're associated with companies in 5 different cities. The problem is a person may want to contact everyone in Singapore, so they want to see that person's contact information in Singapore versus LA. They want that Singapore address to be caught in that search. One way, a database that we use enables us to relate records. So it's a version of your number 1, multiple contacts. So, and when you bring up one record, all the related records come up simultaneously. Right. That way they're both, now, if you're just, you still got duplicates for that individual if you're just doing lists of names, etc. Yeah. But at least for functional purposes, like finding everybody in Singapore, or if you just bring up one of that person's records, then all the other 4 will show up simultaneously as related records. The other thing is to just, just like you do with addresses, you have like home address or address 1 or, phone number 1, whatever. You just have multiple roles, but that gets cumbersome because usually it's a role at a company. So it's got to be role 1, company 1, role 2, company 2, have different addresses, etc. So our best solution has been that related records for multiple contacts.
Okay, that sounds very similar. I think you could maybe got a slight variation on one of these options. There are probably infinite ways of trying to solve this thing, and people have come up with all sorts of creative things. That second option you discussed about just adding, role 1, role 2, role 3 as fields, and then account 1, account 2, account 3. That's kind of how Dynamics or Dataverse handles email addresses today. You can see that email address 1, 2, and 3, and it's really messy. It's really hard to know which ones, unless you change the label, which one should I use for the work email, which one should I use for personal email, and then things like all the marketing add-ons, whether you use Dynamics 365, customer insights, journeys, sorry, it's a mouthful, it used to be called marketing, or whether you use a third-party app. They don't play well with multiple email addresses on a contact record, and so yeah, that design option will be quite messy. All right. Any others? Okay, so it's experimentation time. So before we experiment, you can see I'm trying to stay in costume here, in character. Let's put on our safety gear, because this could get messy. You're probably a little bit far away from Brisbane, Australia, to get covered in green goo, but I don't want to ruin this suit. So let's go. I can stop sharing that one, and I'm going to start sharing my browser. Okay, here we go. So you should be able to see a Power App based on Dataverse. So just to give you some orientation, I've got 5 tabs open here. There are 5 different apps that I've built to illustrate some of these design ideas. Can you see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, I don't know if you're just stunned by my costume change. But, okay, this is a very thin veneer of an application. This is not I haven't spent weeks building this out. This is really just, it's about an hour per app. And so I don't want to go too deep. There's some sample data in here, but if you ask me to wander around and open lots of different tabs and records, the wheels will fall off my demo. So I've got multiple contacts. We've got connections. Then I had to deploy a different environment because it's 2023 and you still can't add a Dynamics app to a Dataverse environment unless you check the box when the Dataverse environment was initially provisioned. That bugs me, but Microsoft's aware of it, and someday they'll prioritize. So I forgot to check the box, and then I had to go build Dynamics because here we're going to be using leads. The leads table is not a restricted table. You don't need a Dynamics 365 sales license to use leads. You can't use the Sales Hub app that Microsoft builds, but you can use a custom app with the leads table in it, which is great. But somebody needs to have a Dynamics license and to provision the Dynamics app when the Dataverse environment is initially provisioned. So that's why I'm in a different environment. I'm going to come back to the original environment for the custom roles and finally for the custom person. So that's where we're at. So in this example, we have multiple contacts. So we've got 14, ignore the 15th. That's part of another demo. I just didn't build a query to filter that one out. But we've got 14 distinct contact records for Elon Musk. And each Elon is its own contact record associated with a different company. And yes, I've had to go in and update this as the company names keep changing, especially X. And I didn't realize there was X.com and X Holdings and X Corp as well as Twitter. So that's all been fun to keep up with. In this example, Elon has got 14 different mobile numbers. He's got a distinct mobile number for every job. So maybe every company gives him a business phone and says, here, use that for business. Or maybe he's built his own mobile phone with 14 SIM cards in it. I don't know. Probably could do anything he wants. He's got different business phone numbers as well. And so if I open up one of these contact records, it's a very traditional contact record with a contact form. It's going to load. Yeah. Sorry, it's I opened all these environments last night, and I hope they stay warm. So this is just a standard contact record with a contact form. It's very hard for a user to know that there's 13 other Elon Musks. And except when you do a search, of course, they all turn up. So there's that appearance of duplicates, but they're nice because I can distinctly find, I could do a search for all my contacts in Palo Alto, and this one would pop up. So we had that question earlier about, people who are based in Singapore, the different contact records, kind of different addresses very easily, different email addresses very easily. So when I'm tracking email backwards and forwards with Elon, anything Elon at muskfoundation.org will get tracked against this. So that's great. Downside is that I can't see any activities with Elon under any other email address. So I would say if I go and meet with Elon, that meeting, the appointment would show up on this timeline. But if I was looking at another copy of Elon Musk, let's say the Elon Musk at Tesla, I wouldn't be able to see that we'd met last week. So that's a bit confusing as a user. So benefits and drawbacks to the multiple contacts option, where we're treating the contact record as a business card. But that's kind of the default. This is what Microsoft ships out of the box in Dataverse, and there's no official guidance to say this is how you should handle it when somebody has multiple jobs. But this is kind of what we're given as a standard functionality. And with no creativity, we could do this. And I could probably deactivate some of these records because THUD no longer exists. Zip2 was sold off. PayPal, he's no longer working at. So yeah, you can manage the status of the record to indicate whether or not that position is still going or not. Any thoughts on the multiple contacts? Who loves it? Who's the big fan of this one and would use this as their go-to solution every time for the Elon Musk problem?
I say not. Doesn't really tickle my fancy. Yeah.
Okay. I've implemented this where I've wanted to keep things real simple, and we didn't have a lot of budget in our project to do anything fancier. And it's when you don't know how bad the problem is going to be, you're not quite sure how many of your contacts are going to have multiple jobs. Like most people don't. Great. Use this over time, see if the problem rears its ugly head, and then maybe come back and address it. But you don't, out of the gate, unless you know your organization has got this challenge, you don't need to implement one of the more creative solutions. Dataverse and Power Apps works perfectly well with this straight out of the box until it becomes an issue for you. All right, next one. Next one, we're using connections. And you can see here, I've taken Elon Musk. This is the Elon Musk, one of the Elon Musks, and I've connected this one to all of the other Elon Musks so that you can see that they're all the same person. I've used a connection record with a connection role type called same person as, which I think is pretty useless. I think this doesn't tell me anything, and because they've all got exactly the same name, it's very confusing. I could have maybe connected this Elon Musk to also works at and listed all the other companies. So I could have done that. That's an alternative use of connections and maybe a slightly more helpful one. And for some reason, a lot of Microsoft Business Apps professionals respond with connections as their first idea when we discuss this problem. Oh yeah, you can use connections to get out of that, but in reality, when you go to implement it, it's actually pretty lame, and I'd avoid it. I'm sorry if that offended you, and you're the connections fanboy or fangirl in the audience. Sorry, you're wrong. It's awful. Don't use it. It's my advice. Number 3. This is slightly more interesting. So here, we've got this Dynamics 365 app. We've repurposed the leads record, and I've renamed it. Well, this is slightly confusing. I've renamed the section as roles, but I actually renamed leads as employment positions. Sorry, that was just snafu when I was doing the customization. So we've got, this is the lead record, and it contains Elon's personal, sorry, this is a contact record. It's a contact. And in the contact record, we're just storing information about the person that is pretty well, not permanent, but is an attribute of the real person. So his name, Elon's birthday, his annual income. Thank goodness somebody at Microsoft in their infinite wisdom didn't limit that to 6 or 7 figures. Probably one of the few people with a multi-billion-dollar a year income. A number of children. So, personal attributes, his height, weight, social security number, his birthday, in this example, his age. Those would all be personal attributes of Elon Musk, the person, and they would be unrelated to his employment. So you would keep those in the contact record, and then anything to do with Elon's job or jobs, you'd store in a lead record. Open up one of these. This is a repurposed lead record. Why use leads? Well, some of the nice things about using leads are so lead is a nice system table. It's already got a connection to the contact record. It's already got a connection to the account record. It's already got email addresses and phone numbers and physical addresses on it. So I could also store business and home or business addresses, mailing addresses on a lead record. It's got its own timeline, and activities from this timeline can be easily configured to roll up to Elon Musk, the contact, and Neuralink, the account. That's really nice. Downside is we are repurposing a system table, which is not designed for this purpose. It's obviously designed to help you qualify potential sales opportunities. And so you'd have to turn off the business process flow and do some other stuff to make leads fit for this purpose. But it doesn't take a lot of customization to get there. I spent literally an hour on this one. Some nice things about it. The Outlook app, I haven't tested it in this environment, but I'm pretty sure it still works. So if I send an email to elon@neuralink.com or receive an email from neuralink.com and I track it here against this lead record, because leads work really nicely in the CRM Outlook app. Similarly, Dynamics 365 Customer Insights Journeys also works with leads. It didn't initially a couple of years ago when Dynamics 365 Marketing first shipped, but does now. So I can still use these lead records, which we've renamed as positions. I can still use those in my marketing. And so I can find all of the co-founders who have got a 555 area code, and I can market to them. And I can use Dynamics Marketing for all of that. So that still works. ERP integration might be a bit more challenging, especially if I want to use any of the standard integration frameworks or toolkits. They wouldn't be expecting me to use leads like this. And so I might need to meddle with my integration, maybe build something custom to do that. So especially if I'm working with Business Central or 365 Finance or Operations. Aidan, you've had a moment to think about it. You've seen a little high-level demonstration of how that would look. What do you think of the leads option?
Actually, I instinctively don't want to like it because I don't really believe in repurposing things, but I think that's the cleanest solution I've seen so far, and it's. Okay. I think I might actually recommend it.
Yeah, there's definitely some anti-repurposing people that are dead set against this. I should also lay my cards on the table here. I don't like leads. I haven't used them in a project for maybe 10 years. I don't recommend people use them. And that's maybe because a lot of my customers are in business-to-business scenarios where they have a defined universe of the types of accounts they sell to. They're selling into financial services or they're selling into manufacturing companies. And so there's a universe of a couple 100,000 organizations that they can market to and sell to. And a defined list of all the people who work there. And they're not getting consumer leads registering on their website, with Outlook email addresses or Hotmail email addresses. So they're not collecting those high volume, low quality lead registrations that you might get at in a business to consumer universe. So I don't use leads. I don't like them. They were, say this in public venues, especially if this is being recorded. Microsoft didn't invent it. They were, let's say they were inspired by earlier CRM applications like SalesLogix, who had a lead table or a lead feature in the mid-90s. And Microsoft picked that up and copied it. Salesforce did the same thing. And we're here we are 25 years later with that vestigial functionality still there. And there's been a few enhancements to leads over the years, but not many. And I don't recommend you use them. So that leaves them perfectly available for repurposing. But if you are using leads as they were intended to manage the qualification of low quality sales opportunities, then also using them for this purpose is going to be really complicated and probably not available to you. So repurposing leads, I think, is a reasonable option, but not if you're using them in the classic lead management sense. Hopefully, Aidan, you can live with that one. I don't know how many of your customers use the classic leads functionality.
I would just applaud your remarks in that regard. I find, at least for clients that I set up contact database for, nowadays you pretty much cannot get anything that's just a contacts database. It has to be a full CRM, solution. And we're not using 80% of that functionality we don't use because the learning curve, not to mention the ongoing upkeep curve, is just too high. Folks just want a straightforward contacts database, and they get pretty tangled up very, very quickly. So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma at this stage of the game because Salesforce, is kind of leading the pack. I look at Salesforce and it's like, this is too much. Maybe if I'm, managing all the salespeople for General Motors, right. Most people aren't. So yeah, it's quite a problem.
Yeah, there's interesting comments there, Anne. I think we all want a solution that's as simple and easy to use as possible. But the world in which we work can get complicated. Handling people with their multiple personas, with the multiple jobs that they have, is not straightforward. I wish it were simple and everybody just had one job. But that's the reality. It's a messy world, and we need a system that can help us cope with that complexity. What I haven't done, and you sparked an idea in my head, is to go and check how much more modern CRM applications handle this. What does HubSpot do? What does Pipedrive do? What does those kind of emerging CRM systems who are maybe don't have the legacy of Dataverse? They weren't designed in the 90s, and they have a reputation perhaps for being easier to use than Salesforce or Dynamics 365 Sales. I wonder how they handle this challenge.
I just recently looked at like 5 or 6 of the major ones, skipping right over Salesforce, and they all are now Salesforce wannabes. And they have the whole dimension of deals and leads and blah, 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 blah. And, it's just, they all want to be full-fledged CRMs. And, some of the nice things they have, where you can coordinate email contact outlooks, keep records of all the emails back and forth and other people can see them, or now it's like other social media contacts. That's nice. But that overarching, very heavy footprint of Salesforce and deals and deal pipelines and all of that.
Yep.
It's just like I said, every single one of them, I was like, we're not going to use 80% of this at best. Yep. Is there just a really good contacts database? And that's all it is, where, yes, we do want to be able to track if we can email from within the database. That's awesome. Make meetings within the database. But usually what those components are separate components. So, it's an interesting development, and I look at it and I wonder, like, who is using this? Because they are popular, but I really wonder if most people aren't using this minute fraction of what the overall software platform offers. Because the learning curve is steep to really use it adroitly for somebody that's like the key contact person, much less, Joe Schmo salesperson out there that just wants to get the contact that's in Boston and they want their email and now what I find is people are just going to LinkedIn. They're giving up on the idea of contacts database.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I appreciate your quest for something that's really simple, easy to use. It reminds me of a story many years ago. I heard about a guy who developed a word processor that was really simple because Microsoft Word was far too complicated and people didn't use a fraction of its features. And he gave it to a bunch of journalists and said, hey, you use this for a week and let me know what you think. And one of them came back very quickly and went, my editors asked me to write a 2,000 word article on your new word processor, but I can't because it doesn't have a word count feature. And the developer said, well, 99% of people never use the word count feature in Microsoft Word, so I didn't build it. It's like, well, journalists do. So see you later. There's 1,000 features that most of us never use, but there's definitely a die-hard fan base for some of those features. And if you take it away, you're going to alienate a small percentage of your user base who completely rely on it. Whether it's writing equations in Word or the word count feature or some other, I'm sure there's lots of lawyers who use very specific citation features that I never use and that kind of thing. So, but these things have grown and grown and grown over time, and the developer's temptation is always to add more features. Come to a product with as much history as Dynamics 365, you can see that. All right, let's move along onto a variation on this intersect entity. So in the previous example, we used the leads table and we repurposed it as our intersect table. In this example, I'm back in Power Apps on Dataverse. I'm using the contact records. I'm looking at Elon Musk, the contact. And here I've used a bunch of records from a custom table called the role. And I've used that to store information about Elon's jobs. So if I open up one of these, it's very similar to what you saw a moment ago, but this is a custom table, not a lead table, a lead record. So we've got Elon, so a relationship to the contact and a relationship to the account and a job title and whatever other information you want to store. Business phone numbers, addresses, email addresses. He might have a work social media account. You could add all that in here. I don't have an activities table. Obviously, you could add a relationship, add activities in here. The downside is that this is unlikely to work quite as nicely as using leads. So if I did add activities in here, those activities would not roll up to the parental contact or the parental account records. Pretty sure I could probably get that to work with a bit more customization. Today, the timeline control has got a lot of flexibility and you can adjust the query. So maybe I could get that to roll up. I haven't tried that. It probably won't work with CRM for Outlook. So even though we've got an email address here, any emails exchanged between me as a user and Elon at Neuralink.com are not going to get tracked in our application. That's a real shame. Same for appointments. We still have just one contact record, which is good. We've got multiple roles. So integration with the back office system should be relatively straightforward. We'd probably integrate at the contact level. And if we needed to, we'd integrate at the role level as well. We might have to flatten that depending upon the integration requirements. This is a nice clean solution. I haven't repurposed anything, Aidan. So it wins, it ticks a number of those boxes. We don't have duplicate contact records. So this is a good option, I think, for a lot of scenarios, depending upon the details of your requirements. Personally, I prefer the third option, which is to repurpose the leads table, because there's a couple of little advantages that it has. This is a really good runaround. Anybody else implemented this or like it based on what they've just seen and heard, or hate it? Right. Well, I'll assume you are stunned and think it's crazy. So the last one we're going to demonstrate is the custom person table. What I've done here, the look and feel is very similar to what we just seen a moment ago. We've got personal attributes about the real person, Elon, in this record, but it's a custom record. It's not a contact. See, it's a person. We've got people, accounts and people. And then for the roles, I have repurposed the contact record. So hopefully that makes sense. There's a distinction between this and some of the other options. So what we've done is taken the contact record and added a custom record on top of it called person. We show the personal attributes about Elon, and then we connect that record to all of the contact records. And we're again treating the contact record as a business card. So very similar to option one, but we've gathered all those Elon Musks together underneath an umbrella record called Elon Musk, a person. So if I open up one of these child records, it's actually the contact record. Sorry, I've opened up the wrong form because I'm having set up my demo correctly. So we're back to having Elon Musk, the contact record. So this is quite nice. We're using the contact record for its original purpose, which is good. We've done a very lightweight customization by adding one custom table on top and a relationship. And as long as we remove contacts from the left-hand navigation and we focus on searching for people, we've reduced the appearance of duplicates. And if Elon changes jobs or leaves a job or whatever, I quite quickly deactivate any of the roles here, but I can see all at once everything about Elon, all the different places he works. I don't have a timeline view here. Again, I could probably add one in. Might require a little bit of, I don't know whether you consider that custom code, but the query in the timeline, I think it's not a PowerFX expression, so it must be a bit of JavaScript to handle that. But this is another good option. This is probably my runner-up. If I wasn't going to suggest using leads, I would use this and use contact records as business cards and put them underneath a person. Anybody else like this one?
Yeah, I've done that before too, Neil, in some environments, and it worked out pretty well.
Okay.
You can keep your history, and it's less work for users. It's great.
So interestingly, many years ago, I hope I can discuss this publicly, but many years ago, Microsoft did write a specification for a person feature. They were thinking something along the same lines, I think, and it was a pretty full-fledged spec that they had written. They'd done some prototyping internally, and they were considering building this out. It got shelved. It's never been developed. I think one of the challenges is, I could build this for a given customer pretty quickly, pretty neatly. Microsoft's working at scale. They have hundreds, millions of environments to worry about, and everybody using Dataverse in slightly different ways. And for them just to roll this out and say, oh, leads, users, and contacts are all now parented by this new person record, that would just fundamentally change everybody's data model and upset gazillions of customers. So I think it's a good idea, and maybe it's an option they want to make available, maybe for new environments, or you can opt into it for your existing environment. But I think that the data migration or the data change is massive, and it would be a very hard feature for Microsoft to roll out at scale. So maybe that's why it got shelved. I don't know, but we can ask Nirav when we go to see him at Platform Conference in a couple of weeks. that's my fifth option. If I'm going to switch back real quick to my
I would also mention there's another purpose for this. In addition to the multiple current roles, like being on multiple boards of trustees or whatever, it would be nice for former jobs.
Yes.
Because again, we have agents out in the field and they're like, I knew that guy when he was at ABC Plumbing,
Yes.
but he's not there anymore, or who else? So at any rate, for the former job, clearly it's the same concept, that it's multiple personas for the same person.
Yeah.
And in that case, temporal in the sense that they're former.
Yes. And we use that on LinkedIn all the time, right? And we can see their employment history, or as much as they want to share anyway. And most of those options I've just shown you, you can use that to highlight their current roles, but also their former roles as well. So you get that.
Yeah, because right now, in some instances, we just embed it. Like, we'll say president, paren, former ABC Plumbing, and a paren, and even though their current title is president QRST Plumbing. So we're just sneaking it in there for the purpose that in a generic universal search that will come up, but not in a template pre-existing view search.
It's a very common requirement to be able to track the changes in people's employment over time, especially where you have long-running relationships with a person that have lasted as they have changed jobs. You might have sold to that person, and they've been the head of procurement for 3 different big organizations that you sell to, and having all that history there and knowing who the rep was and their order value and how being able to see that is golden. So very common requirement too. All right, so I just had some screenshots in this presentation just in case my demos didn't work out, but we've seen most of these. And then I didn't build a demo for this one, number 6, because I really don't like it. I really just have trauma recollections of what it was like as a user at KPMG Australia when this was implemented. So in this example, or the way that this was implemented, you take the contact table and you use it twice. Once for the person, and you have a type record on that type of contact, and you probably have a specific form. When the type equals person, use this form. And then for the person's job, you have you use the same table, the contact table. You have a different type, called maybe a contact, and you have a different form. At KPMG Australia, in their infinite wisdom, the type labels were called contact, and client contact. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it messed up all sorts of stuff like the Outlook app and stuff. So maybe it was the way it was implemented, and it was a bit of a rush, and they could have done a better job at it. Maybe I could do a better job. Maybe some of you could do a better job if you really sat down and thought about it and designed it more pleasantly. But I haven't seen that one working. But it's worth consideration. There might be scenarios in which this is the best option. I'm not sure. So let's wrap up. I'll bring this home with I've asked you a couple of times to express your preferences. Aidan is joining me, I hope, in the leads as roles camp, number 3. It's my preference. The custom role table is a good runner-up. The custom person table is a good option. Multiple contacts is the default option, and it can work if you only see this problem occasionally. Connections, I don't recommend. I strongly don't recommend. And self-referential contacts, I have reservations about as well. So maybe I should order these. My favorites. But 3, 4, and 5 worth evaluating for. And there's not one option here that is universally the best. by no means. And the best one for your scenario might not even be on here. So I hope that's inspired you to go away and try some of these out. Next time you come across this challenge and your customer says, oh yeah, but we want to know where they used to work. Or I'm dealing with shareholders who've got relationships with multiple organizations, or nurses who teach at different university hospitals. Then you'll come back to this presentation and go, oh, I wonder what other options we have of solving this, and you'll come back and try some of these out. My name's been Neil Benson. I publish a lot of free content under the Amazing Apps brand. So I've got my podcast, a YouTube channel, there's my LinkedIn profile, and you're welcome to come and check out my courses. I've got a selection of free and paid courses to help you build more agile business applications. Thanks very much, DC, for having me. I really appreciate the time this evening. It's almost 9 a.m. here in Australia, so my day is just about to start. But it's been fun joining you this evening. Thanks for having me back.